I moved to Pasadena from Connecticut about, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago when my wife died. And I had always, I'm an engineer by trade. I went to the Armory. Someone recommended the Armory as a place where I could go to school. And I found there was a class there in the evening for painters. And my training as a painter is very slight. I took some classes at the New York Art Students League in life drawing. And I did the same thing at the Brooklyn Museum. I'm originally a New Yorker. And there was this class that was being given in the evening at the Armory, and Quentin B. Miller was the teacher. That's why I got to meet him, and it was an interesting meeting because I didn't know what he expected of me. I never really took a formal class in painting. My experience in school in life drawing was you went in and there was a model, and the teacher went around and looked at everybody's work and made a comment or two, and that was my experience. I never really had anyone who was a teacher. So and Quentin had his class, and I didn't know what to expect, so I went there with my paints, and I said I figured there'd be something, still life or something that he would arrange for me to paint, and he would make an assessment of what my ability was. And there was nothing like that. So I said to him, well, what do you want me to do? He said, I don't care. So I said, well, what should I paint? He said, I don't care. So I took my paints and I painted the wall. There was some pipes on the wall and some easels laying up against the wall and stuff like that. And I painted that. And he seemed to like it. And so that was my introduction to Quentin, and he's been my teacher ever since. My interest really is in figurative painting and in telling stories. My view of what painting is, it's a form of communication. And although I guess you can communicate with abstract paintings, I don't know how to do that. But so I paint things that I'm familiar with. Mm-hmm. My memories, political issues that bother me, things I read about in the newspaper, and whatever I can dream up.
Do you feel more liberated now to just, knowing that you don't have to go to a job and you can just focus on whatever the work is? Do you feel more liberated to do anything, or has that always been part of your work?
I think that in some ways I feel less liberated. I think that when I painted, on Sundays or my day off or whatever it was I did when I was working at another job, nobody looked at what I did. I did it wherever I had a space in my house, and so I would show it to my wife, and she would always be complimentary, and she would always say, "That's nice." And I was grateful for that, and that's all I expected. But once other people started looking at my work, I feel that it's been intimidating and inhibiting to me. And look at some of the old things I've done, and I think in some ways they're freer. I can't go back there anymore. I think that I have an imagination about what I read about and see and the subject matter that I paint, but I would like to be able to paint more fluently, whatever that means. And I do think that I'm fighting this business of trying to please other people, especially people who buy my paintings. Most of my paintings are not really expensive, but I did sell one painting for about $3,000, and I think of that painting and I say to myself, what did I do that made it worth $3,000 if somebody would want to spend that kind of money for it? And maybe I can do that again. Yeah. The trouble is that what again means is I don't know. I do like to think of new projects because they give me a a kind of like a foundation for what to paint. Like if I do a little writing, short story writing, and so sometimes I like to illustrate the short story. So now I've got it gives me a perfect ideas for what to draw for my short story, and that's the kind of stuff that I do. You know, I try to do what I know best, and that's fairly intellectual kinds of paintings. And that's how I think of myself. I don't think of myself as an artist. I don't know what an artist really is, but an artist is sort of to me like a very high-level philosophical person, and I would like to be an artist. But right now, I had an uncle by marriage who was a house painter, and he spoke with a Yiddish accent, and he called himself a painter. And so I think of myself as sort of like a painter.
There's what we think an artist is, you know, and that may be a romanticized version of what may have been classically defined as artists. Right. But everyone has a different idea, and everyone's afraid that they're going to be labeled someone else's idea of an artist. And so, you know, like, when I hear artist, I think bum. Because that was my upbringing. So, like, my parents didn't want me to be an artist because they equated with being a bum and being an artist, you know, as if they were the same thing. And so, when people say, "Oh, you're an artist," and I'm thinking, great, they think I'm a bum. Yeah. You know, especially if they're not artists. If they're, you know, when an artist is talking to another artist, you're like, "Oh yeah, I know your work. You know, either I like it, I don't like it, or you know, or you're a good friend, or you're not. You know, it doesn't matter. We recognize each other as peers. But when you're talking to someone who doesn't have a piece of artwork in their house and they have nothing to attach meaning to, then you really at their mercy, you know, as far as how they're going to perceive you. But that's true with everybody. But, you know, somehow I think artists are almost afraid to be defined by this single word. And so we kind of like distance ourselves from it.
Yeah, well, I have a different view of the word than you do. I mean, to me, it's an esteemed word. And I think of, you know, from the movies, I saw Kirk Douglas do Vincent Van Gogh.
Oh, I love that movie.
And I like Kirk Douglas as an actor. And Vincent Van Gogh was a man who seemed to be, he was like an artist in the sense that he was driven to do this work no matter what. And, you know, and until he drove himself out of his mind. And I'm sorry that he, you know, wasn't more successful in his lifetime as a, you know, successful in people recognizing how good he really was. But so he's an artist, there's no question in my mind. But it's the same thing with the word like poet. I mean, I write limericks sometimes, but I'm not a poet. I mean, a poet is a person who writes things that I can't understand. So, you know, it's the same thing. I hold it with great respect, and maybe someday I'll be an artist. But I right now, it's not because I think it's a bad word. I think it's a really good word.
Well, you know, in my defense, I do think that being an artist is a great thing. I feel that other people think it means bum.
Right. Well, when you start asking people to define something, even what seems the most obvious thing, you'll find, and I've done this, that they don't know. And I'll give you an example, which is a current example. I decided that I'm going to paint something that describes my opinion, what I think is the difference between the average man and the average woman. Now that seemed like, well, you don't know the difference between a man and a woman? What are you, stupid? You know. So I started asking other people, what is a man? What is the difference between a man and a woman? An average man and a woman. I wanted to make it as simple as I could. I say the average man and woman because I know that men and women come in all different shapes and sizes and attitudes, and some women have beards and some men don't, and And so I wanted to talk about the average, what we consider to be an average man and an average woman, and I still don't know anyone else's opinion. All I know is my own.
And I noticed that, you know, for a lot of your subjects, you don't define their faces. Is there a reason behind that?
Well, that's true. I don't often or always do that, and because I think that unless the face adds something to the picture, there's no need to do it. And I know that one of the things that Quentin told me about, and he thought that I painted a little like Milton Avery. And in fact, I bought a book about Milton Avery to study his paintings, and he used people's figures in the same way that I use them, in a way where the forms are important, but the faces are not always important, and except where the expression is, meaningful to the picture. Because I tell stories, that's what I'm doing, and in this case, I don't think that the faces would help much. That was my feeling about it at that time. So I left those faces out for the most part. But when I make my first sketches for a painting, I do more details than you'd actually see. Then I paint over them because they don't matter to me.